Top of the hour, and Martin has
Okay.
started our recording. So welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. This morning, we have Lino Co Covarrubias joining us from Jewish Family Service. I keep wanting to call it Jewish Family Services, but I believe it's singular, Jewish Family Service.
It
Uh,
is.
Lino had given a fascinating presentation about his organization's work on resettlement services at First Congregational Church sometime last year now, I think, and I thought it would be good for this group. So he's graciously agreed to join us. I believe, Lino, you're perhaps going to start with an overview of the larger organization and then focus in on the resettlement services.
Right.
And I think what we'll do for Lino's benefit, our typical custom, let's go around and very briefly introduce ourselves. That'll help give Lino a sense of who's in the audience. Well, let's start with the folks at MetroWest. Martin?
Yeah, let me just say that I have no idea what this read.ai meeting notes is. If anybody does, let me know. The AI has gotten out of hand. I can't understand it all, but I didn't turn it on intentionally. I don't know what it is, but I think I'm just going to ignore it. Anyway, I'm Martin Kessler. I'm supposedly the technical person over here at MetroWorks. We have two other people, and I sort of the man about town. I have been in town meeting and on the open space committee for upwards of 20 years, and that's about, just whatever's going on in Natick, I try to keep up with it. And then
I'm Donna McKenzie, I guess, woman about town, former school committee member, town meeting member, charter bylaw review committee member. But as I started to say before, I have admired Jewish Family Service for so long that I couldn't not come to this. I've heard not only about the resettlement, but things that you do for children in need in this community. And now, as Mr. Carew just said, veterans too. So great to be here and to learn from you.
Thanks, Donna. Kathleen?
Hi, I'm Kathleen Donovan. I'm a member of Coffee with a Purpose for about a year. I've been on the Library Board of Trustees in Natick for many years, and also now volunteer with Keep Natick Beautiful, and very much looking forward to learning about your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Got anybody else there, Martin, or is it the three of you just now?
that's it for here.
Okay, Elaine?
I'm relatively new to Natick. I followed my son and his wife here. I'm a mother, a grandmother, and I co-founded an organization in Boston to support the deinstitutionalization efforts that the Commonwealth was taking to allow people with disabilities to leave the state institutions and live in the community. So that was my major work for many years.
Thanks, Elaine. Polly?
Good morning. Paul Carew. I'm the Uncle Paul, you call me. I'm the Veterans Director for Natick. I'm quite familiar with your organization and have utilized your services in the past, and I thank you and the organization for the great work that you do.
Thanks, Paul. Tom? Got to come off mute there. There you go.
There you go. Yeah, I'm Tom Daly. I've been living in Natick now about 34 years. Familiar with the Jewish Family Services. I did work with them many years ago. And town meeting member, and welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Evan, come off mute and say hi. Great.
I'm Evan. I'm a seeker, I'm a musician. I am exploring the world, looking to find ways to bring harmony within myself and my community. And it's my first time here today, so thanks.
Awesome. Great to have you. Carrie?
Hi, good morning, Lino. 21 years here, Nick. I
go back to Coffee with a Purpose when we used to meet in person, and Sally would bring coffee up from the basement there, and we'd have a nice discussion. Stuff around town with environment, sustainability, things.
Mhm.
Treasure for keeps, Pat just appeared. Keep Native beautiful, Rotarian, many other things here. Look forward to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Carrie. Bill?
Good morning. Excuse me. Hi, Lino. Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose. I would consider myself a longtime Coffee with a Purpose devotee back when Pat was running it, and glad to see it continuing to bring interesting and informed people in for us. It's not me.
Yeah.
I would just share that in my past life, working for New York State, I worked for the Department of Mental Hygiene and also the Department of Social Services. So I'm familiar with what the state attempts to do, and I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. So welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Carol?
Good morning, Bill. I'm Carol Berkowitz, and I've lived in Natick over 50 years, and I live on Lake Cochituate, so I've been concerned with that issue, plus Metco at the high school, and yeah, just generally other things. Natick, so I love the town, and welcome.
Thanks, Carol. Sally?
Good morning. I'm really looking forward to your presentation today, Lino. And I got hooked in by my brother, Pat Conaway, to work to start Coffee with a Purpose, and with Leslie Githens and Carrie. And oh my gosh, I've only been here 7 years, but Natick is a very dynamic town. And I really appreciate a lot of the ways that I'm learning about society and important issues in Natick. It's kind of a small microcosm of a very liberal and caring world. Interested to hear you today. Thanks.
Thanks, Sally. Deborah, you want to come off mute and say hi? There you go.
Hi, this is Deb. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Deb Mitchell. I'm the founder of Native for Black Lives Matter. I'm currently on sabbatical and preparing to go away to visit my family home in Maryland. I thought I would just come out and say hello before I leave. And I will see you guys when I get back, and hopefully in September. We won't be meeting on Wednesday because I'm going to be out of town, and I will be able to connect. Paul has Bishop Kelly's phone number, Paul Carew, and they're close friends now. So
Okay.
if you need anything, you can check me with Paul or the Bishop.
Thanks for checking in with us, Deb, and good luck with your dad. All right.
Yeah, I just need some rest right now. Thank you.
Thanks. Pat?
Good morning. Pat Conaway, Keep Native Beautiful.
Okay. Thanks, Pat. Brinley?
Good morning, Brinley Vickers. Been here for, I don't know, 20 years. Town meeting member. Served on the recycling committee when it was a recycling committee, and the Page You Throw task force, and just basically interested in environmentalism and all of the goodness that is Natick and the work that people do. I'm really glad to have you here. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Brinley. And I guess the answer to the what Read AI is Lino added it himself. It's a AI tool that generates meeting summaries. So that's pretty cool. I didn't know about that.
I don't know how it started. I guess AI can do things on its own without human intervention. So,
well, what's interesting about Read AI, it will take the video, notes, and you have to subscribe to the service, but it will put a whole thing together, just the snippets. But it's assuming that I want it. That's why I think AI is taking over some of our work where it assumes you want it, unless you tell it not to.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. All right, cool. I think that's all of us for now. Others may filter in, but Lena will turn it over to you. Oh, and we'll just try to use our normal custom of using the raise hand function. Lena, would you prefer the folks hold questions till the end of your remarks, or is it okay to interrupt at any time? Your call.
I think it's what I like to do is my presentation is about 20 minutes.
Okay.
And to go through it, because I want to just get through the whole thing
Sure.
and to make sure that there's time at the end for very specific questions. I always found out it works. It's more efficient because we can get really bogged down in one question and run out of time for the rest.
Yeah.
So that's what I would love to do. Take your notes. And again, my presentation is about 20 to 25 minutes. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, about our organization, and then go into our work with immigrant services.
Awesome.
And so here we go. And thank you everybody for your kind remarks. One of the things people say about us, and we're trying to change that we're one of the best kept secrets in social services because we're doing all this great work and no one knows about us. Because we've decided to invest all these years in direct service versus marketing communications. But we're large enough, as you will see, that we are starting to really bridge out into communicating all the great work that we do. So, all right, I'm going to share my presentation. There it is. All right, you should be able to see the screen. It says Immigrant Service, JFS.
Yep.
Thumbs up. Great. All right, perfect. Well, a little bit about myself, so you know who's presenting. I am a first-generation set of Mexican immigrants. Both my parents were born in Mexico. I was a naval officer for 22 years. I served in the U.S. Navy. I graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy and had a wonderful time. And eventually my wife got tired of me deploying all the time and said, you know, enough time. And that was, of course, the 90s, as you know, were very busy for all of us in the military with all the different conflicts and situations around the world. And certainly I served, my expertise was surface-to-air missile systems. And so a lot of people ask me, how did you bridge from being in the military to social services? And I like to tell people that's simple. You know, you have a mission, you have resources, you have personnel. Whatever you're doing, those are the three major concentrations of any operation, any business. So it's actually an easy bridge for me, particularly because I took over as chief operating officer when I was hired at JFS, and that's been my first job and only job after I left the Navy. And I've been the CEO for 12. I was the CEO for 12 years, and then I went through a search process and got selected to be the CEO. I like to tell people I wasn't anointed. I actually went through a whole search process, interviews, and I was made the offer as CEO. and I took over in January 2020. Most people say, "Oh, that's awful because you had COVID." But I like to tell people I was really actually perfectly situated to respond to COVID because I was in a tactical role before. And as we all know, COVID was completely tactical. It was nothing strategic. It was a new thing. So we needed to just move forward and figure it out as we went. A little about our organization. We are celebrating our 45th anniversary this year. We're a social service agency that serves older adults, definitely Jewish families, and our growing work definitely with immigrants, including refugees, asylum seekers, temporary protective status. There are many statuses of immigrants/migrants, and I will define the difference between immigrants and migrants shortly, that come to our community. We serve about 8,000 a year, and our budget is about 6 million. We have 85 employees. When we started in 1979, there were 3 employees, and I believe the budget was something like $650. And we really grew to what we are now, doing resettlement work. Our major area growth was in the 80s and 90s, resettling Jewish families from the former Soviet Union. And some of you might have been involved in that work back then. Just as far as our immigrant services work, we have been, like I said, doing this type of work since 1979. So we transitioned from serving the Jewish community in resettlement work to serving other communities coming from around the world in particularly in resettlement work. And I'll talk about what resettlement means in a bit, but it's overall our work with immigrant services includes welcoming new arrivals, resettling them, making sure they're successful jobs, and then longer term success as with them becoming citizens and being able to vote. Okay, I spent a lot of time in the definitions area because you hear a lot of things, excuse me, in the news. I think the news uses the definitions back and forth, but here you're going to hear what the real skinny is. So refugees, when we say a family is a refugee family, they're a person, his or her country of nationality, who's unable or unwilling to return to his or her country of nationality because of persecution or well-founded fear of persecution on the account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. So refugees, they're a part of the UN High Commission on Refugees. The United States is a signatory to the UN High Commission on Refugees. And this year, President Biden signed off on receiving 125,000 refugees. This is individuals. Fairly small number compared, I'll tell you what Canada has signed off this year, and they have signed off to bring into their country 500,000 refugees. What's great about refugees, because the way the charter is written, as soon as they land at Logan for us, they already have, their green card status eligible. They're immediately work authorization eligible, and they come with at least 3 months of federal funding. That's the refugees. So they are at least in a good position for us to quickly move them into our community, unlike the other categories that I'll talk about. But those are refugees. They are from the UN High Commission on Refugees. It's a very long process of application. You if you don't have a family member in the host country, you don't know where you're going to end up. You could put in, I want to go to the US, Canada, and you could end up in England or in Holland. So unless you have family members in a host country, you may or may not get preferential treatment. But if you don't have anyone, it's really you don't know where you may end up. Asylees, this is what we've all been hearing about in the news. Particularly the asylum seekers who have small children and qualify for emergency shelter. They're in shelters throughout. There's about 55 hotels throughout the Commonwealth, and the numbers are about 3,500 families that are asylum seeking families in shelter. When it comes to asylum, it's first of all they don't have a green card, so they don't yet have a pathway for citizenship. They are petitioning the federal government for asylum, and they have to go through the federal court process to get approval or not. Only 20% of asylum seekers get approved. It's a very, very low number. It's a very, very high bar to meet in accordance with our immigration asylum laws currently. So what you've heard in the news of the majority of the asylum seekers locally, mostly from Haiti and Venezuela. And the ones that are from Haiti, they didn't come here directly from Haiti. They were actually living in Brazil and Chile. And in Brazil, their current government is similar to our former federal government we had in place, not friendly to immigrants, and basically anyone that's undocumented are being kicked out of Brazil. So that's a huge portion of the Haitian community that's left Haiti are in South America. So they've been kicked out. So they started trekking to the Mexican-US border. And then they have family in Chile and in Chile, it's mostly a white country. There was a lot of racism to the Haitian community. So they also, when they heard their family members from Brazil are going north, they decided to join them. So this has created this large wave of migration to our borders because of these governments in these countries not welcoming them anymore. And the situation with asylum seekers also, there is no funding attached to them, right? So when they show up here, that's why they immediately end up in shelters, is because there is no federal funding attached to asylum seekers. Third category that we've been very much involved with is called humanitarian parolees. And these are the Ukrainian war evacuees. These are the Afghan evacuees. All of them have come into the US in this category called humanitarian parolee. This is a immigration status to allow someone, really the concept is to shelter in place for 2 years, right? So for the Ukrainian war evacuees, that makes a lot of sense. Doesn't make so much sense for the Afghan evacuees, right? Because it's not like we're going to send them back after 2 years. So a lot of things need to be worked out in Congress with this status. But for Ukrainians, the humanitarian parolee status just got extended for another 2 years, given the war in Ukraine. And there's really, at the time right now, it doesn't seem like it's going to be over anytime soon. So those are the three major categories of families we work with. Now, the difference between immigrants and migrants, immigrants is really, these are groups that are in an immigration status that have a pathway to citizenship. So in other words, they have a green card, they're a green card holder. So refugees are immigrants, right? Asylum seekers are not at this time, they're migrants, right? They're here on some sort of status, hoping that at some point they'll be approved and then we'll have a green card and then can proceed in the pathway to citizenship. And like I said, asylum seekers, they only have a 20% chance of being approved, right? Because it's a very high bar. And most people go, well, what do they do then? We don't send them back to those dangerous countries. Nope. At that point, they just become undocumented and still remain in the US, but do not have, proper documentation to be in the US. So that's the real definitive distinction between immigrants and migrants. And you hear it in the news back and forth, but really migrants are people here that don't have a pathway. This includes all kinds of different other visa immigration statuses. Like you hear a lot about the H-1Bs, right? A lot of companies use that to bring in different talent. They would be considered migrants because they do not yet have a pathway to citizenship, unless the company really likes them, sponsors them at a higher level, and then they can at some point get a green card. I won't spend a lot of time in the resettlement in the US. I think just to know that throughout the country, there's 250 affiliates. It used to be 550. And because of the different administrations that have come in, and really there's been a lack of the federal government to really bolster immigration to our country, the organizations like JFS that only did resettlement. We do a lot of other things, but some organizations out there only did resettlement work and they just couldn't survive. So we don't have too many resettlement agencies left throughout the country. Most are on the coast. They're on the West Coast, East Coast, and the Southern Coast. That's where you find most of them. And again, our focus, we get federal funding for 90 days for refugees from the UN Commission, and our job is to resettle them and get them self-sufficient in 90 days. And you say, that's impossible. You're correct. And this is why our model is a bit different than what the federal government has set up. Our federal system for refugees is really set up to bring people and have them really sit in the cycle of poverty. Okay. Where are our immigrants coming from? I mostly alluded to this. We certainly have, in our area, we serve, by the way, what we call MetroWest. And we have, as many of you know, a large Brazilian community, and it's been well established now. The Brazilian community is well established in Framingham, Milford, and Marlborough. But we also now have a growing number of Central Americans coming to our community, and that's because of different situations in Central America. Definitely, there's what you hear. Unsafe situations, government-sponsored terrorism towards their citizens, etc. So we're starting to see the large growing Central American community in MetroWest. We definitely talked about Haiti. Refugees, where are they coming from? I alluded to Venezuela. We still have refugees coming from Syria because, as you know, Syria continues to they're still in a civil war situation. There's thousands and thousands in camps in Jordan and Turkey. So they apply for the UN High Commission refugee program, and little by little they get approved. We do have people, families from Afghanistan. The Taliban is allowing some families to apply for refugee status. There's also many other organizations helping those from Afghanistan leave. And the Taliban has been once they found out who was working with the U.S. government and military, as long as you weren't, they do allow you to transition out of the country. And we have also with refugee programs, like I mentioned, from Central America, Guatemala, Nicaragua. We've been receiving some from Algeria and Africa, Uganda. I won't spend much time here. Why here? Why now? I think overall, the large number of asylum seekers that have come into our community. Certainly, the reason for the huge spikes in the last year were because, as you've heard of, the ending of Title 42 and the CBP-1 app. Literally, technology allowed for faster processing of families at the Mexican-U.S. border. However, our current federal government did not think of all the infrastructure that needs to be in place to allow the U.S. to, absorb these large numbers. And in particular, as you know, we do not have in the U.S. a national immigration policy. And what would a national immigration policy look like? Well, when asylum petitioners would come to a border entry with his app, we had a policy. Those families would be directed to certain parts of the country where the federal court system has plenty of room for their asylum case. B, there's affordable housing, and C, there's plenty of jobs. Right? If we had this type of immigration policy, all those things would happen. The way it works now, they come in, they find enough. The immigration officials see that you have enough information to be allowed to petition for an asylum case. Then they ask them, where do you want to go? And for the Haitian community, it's been either New York or Boston, not LA, not Oklahoma City, not Kansas City, not Minnesota, where there's plenty of jobs, plenty of openings in the federal court system. So in essence, the federal court system for immigration it's booked for 4 years. So it's really not a great situation to be in here in the U.S. with regards to the lack of immigration policy. Our current challenges locally. We're here local. What's going on here locally? Well, for us, like I alluded to, for refugees, the federal government only pays us to basically settle people and have them be able to pay for their rent, and of course they're very high rental rates, as you know now, for 3 months. It's not a success model. So we've for many years have been we raise money to be able to help families for at least a year, right? But our data shows that if we can help a family for a year, and they go through these different levels of language skills and different jobs, that after a year they can exist off the economy. But it does take that year. So our challenge is, of course, this notion of community sponsorships, and something I do just about every Sunday. I go to different faith organizations, other organizations, and talk about what we're doing in immigration and resettling people, and how different organizations are able to help. And it's not only as far as resources for rent, it's also volunteers. It's also helping, outfit apartments, find all the things to outfit an apartment, etc. I put this here, why does it matter? Because I think we've had, in particular, many facets, not so much in our community, but in different areas where there's notion that immigrants take American jobs. And it's actually the complete different. It's actually not the case. That actually, our current workforce challenges, we need immigrants in our community to do the many jobs that are gapped at this time, including home care services for older adults, hotel services, restaurant services, janitorial services in hospitals. You wouldn't believe how many ER rooms are not available at hospitals because janitorial services just hasn't gotten to them, right? So when the ambulance is calling around for open ER, a lot of times it's literally the janitorial service piece, because it needs to be disinfected and properly cleaned out for another patient. But I always put this little thing here. Immigrants are financial assets to the community. Right now, they're 21% of our workforce in the Commonwealth, and they have a large tax contribution and many entrepreneurs. But really, the really stress point right now is the lower paid jobs, where we really need them to particularly with older adults. That's really an area that has us very concerned. Won't talk much about our resettle model, but yes, it's staff driven, but volunteer powered. We absolutely, I mentioned we have 85 employees, but we have over 350 active volunteers. And our favorite volunteer is a retiree, because they have time. And most of our work is during the day. It's not on the weekends or at night. So the volunteer power piece is really important to us. And of course, having community investment, that we're working with faith organizations, municipalities, right? These new arrivals, immigrant families are going to be part of our community fiber. So making sure that everybody's involved has really made it a success model for us in the past. Won't spend much here, other than the resettlement partnership, right? It's really one of those. It has a whole bunch of different components: housing, health, education, employment, and white communities here is many times how we access housing, get help with health, and how we work with educations with different school systems and get employment for new arriving families. It's really community contacts, right? People, and you understand the importance of welcoming these new families. And as far as volunteer roles, we have that's our special sauce for success, as I mentioned, and we have light lifts, heavy lifts, whatever somebody is comfortable with. What's worked really well for us is using our faith organization contacts, and a faith organization will literally quote adopt a family, and we work with the faith organization to resettle them, our social workers, but that becomes the family of that faith group, and it's worked really well for the families. The faith organizations get a lot out of it, and of course it helps us be able to resettle more families. And there's all kinds of different volunteer roles. This is something I would do if an organization is really ready to move forward, and we can talk about how we structure volunteer core teams for success. We just don't say, here's the family, call us if you need any help. We actually train the volunteers. We build a core team that's with a volunteer team coordinator. That's really who we work through, or normally it's two 2 or 3 coordinators. But everything from housing, finding housing, health pathways, making sure accessing different primary cares. We all know that's really tough. And you know, education, making sure that the kids get enrolled in school, employment pathways, like I mentioned before, are really important roles that volunteers play. I won't talk much about these different roles, but we have found the benefit of our model, right, is, you know, accelerated language skills. That is the primary most important thing for our new arriving families, is to really make sure that they get not only the formal ESL, but also conversational. We work with volunteers. They zoom in with the family and just they take a second grader book and start going through it. Words, elephant, you know, all the different things that we would do with a you know, a reader that's just starting to read in English. We use the same type of books. And we feel the benefit of this model, this more extended model using community input is really that after 1 year, these families, whether they decide to stay in this community, sometimes they decide because other members of their families have landed elsewhere in the US that they want to move, but they're ready to be able to assume you know, their lives anywhere outside of Massachusetts or within Massachusetts. Okay. And this, I get a lot of questions like, how can we help Lino? You know, we have, like I mentioned, volunteer opportunities, fundraising is important for us, furniture donations, connections to local landlords, you know, gift card campaigns are a big thing. We have been very popular with schools, also faith organization, you know, Sunday schools where they're able to do something that's meaningful, and gift cards are great because we can actually give them to arriving families and they can actually go shopping for themselves instead of us giving them a bag of used clothing. We give them a gift card to whether it's Target or Walmart, and they can actually go shopping for themselves. So it's an important part of integrating them into our community. And I will post before we end a link that will have this information, right? How can you help for this effort? Okay, that was like 20 minutes of a lot of information, right? It's like drinking out of a fire hose. But I'm here to answer any and all questions. I will tell you this is some of the most important work we do. I will tell you that we don't worry much about, you know, once the families have a pathway. We worry about the families that do not have a pathway. But families that do have a pathway to citizenship, you know, they're young, they want to work hard, and they will. So, and there's all these different things we're doing. If we have time, I can talk about them. Some innovative approaches, how are we going to use our immigrant workforce to help our aging community? Because personally, for me and our staff, my leadership team, what keeps us up at night is what we're going to do with so many aging community members in MetroWest. The list keeps growing, the needs keep growing. We want to be prepared to be able to provide services and keep our older adult community independent at home. So.
Well, that's terrific. Like you say, a fire hose. I'm sure a lot of folks are formulating their questions. I'll start off with two. One just very pragmatic. If you're willing to share a copy of the presentation,
yes,
I'll make sure that the group has access to that. And in terms of the aging population, one thing I wanted to follow up on. So clearly, English speaking skills certainly very important, and you say you emphasize trying to get to that level of proficiency with them very quickly. I'm curious whether any of your training focuses on this will sound weird, but cooking or cuisine skills. And I say this just from anecdote of having to care for some aging parents and bringing in non-English speaking, non-native folks to help care for them. One of the challenges, clearly there was a language challenge, and you're addressing that. But another challenge was cuisine. When these folks were cooking for my parents, they just weren't used to if they cooked what they knew how to cook, it just tasted so different than what are, and they didn't necessarily know how to cook what folks here would cook. So I'm just curious whether you focus on that at all.
Yeah, we have a home care department at JFS. It's part of what we do. So part of the services we provide is meal service. So depending on the assessment of who we're serving, right, low carb, low salt, what they like, we train our home care employees to be able to cook those meals. So that's why it's exciting, and we're really excited of being able to. I mean, right now the biggest challenge is finding affordable housing. There's no affordable housing. I mean, it's all, if you find it, it's market rate. So, and yet we have this challenge of older adults needing services. Most of the empty beds in MetroWest are in single family homes, and 60%, and there's about 3,000 of them, 60% of them in MetroWest are owned by an older adult that has lost a spouse or partner. So that creates immediate financial distress because half the income, right, Social Security, is no longer coming in. So and they may need services. So we're looking at a model of moving an immigrant family in with this older adult, where the traditional family, mom, wife, can provide that service, that home care service. They have a roof, right? That the dad, husband, traditionally our plan with them is you have to immediately start working 60 hours a week. That's the magic number. So that's 2 jobs. But then they also they pay rent, right? So they're paying rent to that older adult, which stabilizes their finances. They're getting caregiving through our program of home care, and we've solved, at least for a year, their housing situation. So there's like there's a social model that we're taking care of a lot of social determinants of health, all in one shot.
Mm-hmm. I see, Evan, you've got a couple of questions you wanted to ask, don't you?
Yeah, I'm building them as they come along. So, couple of them. One, I will preface that I'm like, a lot of my early learning had to do with like emotional and behavioral learning, and then my hard work later on in life has been practical learning about systems and how I can live within society, things like doing your taxes, stuff like that. And like, that was new to me at an older age. And I imagine that someone that's coming to this country has to learn those things. So one of my questions was, this is actually I'm just out of curiosity and in my own personal benefit of being aware of how my own structure that I live within works. Is there like a way to access, like, when you're becoming a citizen, there's a bunch of stuff you have to learn. And from what I've heard, the point of entry is actually quite difficult. You have to know a lot about this stuff that people that already live here do not know. So like, how can you acquire that information? How could someone like me acquire that information so I could be as hip as anybody else coming through, just to be familiar with my own surroundings? That's one question. Question 2 was the volunteering for refugees. I believe so much that communication is important for all relationships. And I was just kind of like, what are the requirements to help volunteer and help people learn languages, pick up a 2nd grade book? Do you have to know other languages, or can you just rock with English? That was question number 2, because I felt a little bit called to know more about that, maybe to do it or something. And then number 3 was I was married for many years to, and I have kids with someone from who's connected very much to Haitian culture. And one of the things that I noticed in the dysfunction of that marriage was the culture clashing and the systems, how people relate to one another in a culture, and then how people relate to another in a culture. And then when families arise and you start having this clash of the titans here, there's so much dissonance and static that comes about, and it requires so much awareness and reflection and communication in order to keep that, to do the yoga of marriage. So with that being said, what is the awareness that comes into play in your work that helps with the understanding of their unique culture and coming here? Is that, I'm just sort of, my thoughts are popping up from that. So
Yeah,
I'll
they're
stop there.
great questions, Aaron.
Great
So
questions, yeah.
the first one I'll address is the question about citizenship and how does one become knowledgeable, how their families become knowledgeable. Well, JFS, we're a citizenship certified organization. So one of the things that we do is, for those families that, right, they start here as refugees, and then 5 years later, if all goes well for them, they can submit an application. We're always consistently working with those volunteers. By the way, what the model is, even though we ask the organizations that whether they're faith or others to adopt that family, what happens, as you would know, that after that year they still stay connected, right? They always become part of their family. So we help the volunteers just inform those families on their citizenship process. I'll tell you, the biggest hurdle for citizenship is not knowledge, it's money, because the application is close to $900. And most immigrant families, even at the 5 year point, may not have those $900. That's what we see as the biggest hurdle. And there is a fee waiver. It's a very complicated application, but it's basically we're the knowledge holders. We're the only citizenship organization in MetroWest. The others are in Boston, Lowell, and Worcester. As far as volunteerism, I'll post the information on how someone can become a volunteer. We of course are a social service agency. We're required to vet every and all volunteers. That's just because how we're insured, etc. And again, we're serving a large bunch of cohort groups. So our volunteer process is very, very, very formal. And the third question, as far as making sure that there's not major clashes in cultures, one of the first things we do with volunteers, remember, we are volunteer powered. We teach our volunteers the different cultures that they're going to be working with. I'll give you an example. Depending on the families, right? If they're Muslim, some women will shake a man's hand because that's their tradition. Others will not. And what we teach is never assume, right? You say hello, and if they want to shake your hand, they will initiate. The Muslim woman will initiate to shake your hand. Now, if they don't, all you do is you put your hand in your heart and you kind of nod, so, acknowledging I have met you, I understand. So we go through this cultural training for our volunteers. Then we work with the schools, because you imagine, there's a new bunch of kids going into a school district that come from a different country, different language. We work with the schools also to help them figure things out. One of the things we have to do as a organization, as a resettlement agency, is I immediately hire people that are culturally and have the language. So when Afghans started coming, we went out and hired 2 full-time, folks that had, Afghan background that could speak, Pashto and communicate with new arrivals. And we've done the same with the Haitian Creole. We've hired some people to work with the volunteer, and to make sure there will always be, these different clashes, like particularly with the Haitian community. We're going to have to work really hard, because as much as I would love to move them into where there's already a Haitian community established, there's no housing there, right? Boston, there's just no housing. So I'm gonna have to move families in different places throughout MetroWest. They may be the first Haitian family that community has had, but we also use it as a growth opportunity for that community. So it just requires us to, the key is our volunteers that are connected to that community where they're moving in. That makes a whole difference.
Thank you for all those answers. Deb, I see you've got your hand up. No, maybe she's not at the computer. There she is. Oh, great. Yeah, go
Hi
ahead.
there.
Yeah.
Yes, I work in the mental health community, and with I don't know if you're familiar with the Clubhouse or Advocates Inc.
Yes.
Yes, and so are you located in Framingham, or where are you located?
Yeah, we're located in Framingham.
Okay, so do you work in conjunction with them to get them like peer specialists, or because I'm sure they're going through a lot of trauma coming
Yeah,
to this
right.
country. Yeah.
Yeah, so we actually the hotels that we're involved with, we're working with advocates. That there's actually there's social workers there working. Really, it's a triage model at this point because for those that have been involved in trauma work, that's a long haul type of approach to to mental health, and we really need to find out where they're going to be settled. We don't with trauma, you don't want a fragmented approach. So working with advocates, they've done a great job of just triaging, making sure everybody's okay, and don't need some really immediate care. But you're right, the trauma piece. Some of these families, some family members, not make it through the Darien Pass. Literally, they have to be left behind. So we have not touched that to the depth that it needs to be until we physically know what community they're going to be part of. Because again, we're going to make sure that the healthcare system in that community and the group that's involved is very much part of assisting them.
Do you know about the there's a clubhouse in Marlboro called Employment Options. You might want to write that down. It's Employment Options. But they have a lot of services for people with disability or people that have mental health issues. And if they register, I'm not sure, but they have access to computers. They can have lunch. They can get training. They can get job help. So it's called Employment Options. It's in Marlboro. And we actually, Dave Buckmatter, we did a video on it. If you like, I could send it to you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Yeah, we actually have worked with them. We moved an Afghan family to Marlboro, and they use those services.
Awesome. Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, that's
Thank you for
great.
that question, Deb.
Thank you.
Pat. I just got to come off mute there.
Thank you for your presentation. It's fascinating and encouraging. A couple of years ago, didn't Massachusetts pass a enlightened law about getting a motor vehicle license for immigrants? And then that enabled them, before they had citizenship, at least to get around and do work and so forth. I was just curious about that law.
Yes. So yes, the legislature did pass, and Governor Baker at the time did sign it. This allowed anyone that was not documented, so undocumented, to act as a driver's license. So that's what's interesting. All those groups all the new arriving groups that we work with, 95% have the proper documentation, right? Refugees have the proper documentation. Asylum seekers, right? They have been allowed to petition. They have the proper documentation. Humanitarian parolees, Ukrainian war refugees, they all have proper documentation. So they could easily apply based on the old rules. It's really the undocumented, those who have been here, who, like I mentioned, did not get their asylum case approved, right? And then they repetition, and then it's been no. They become undocumented at that point, so they can actually apply for a driver's license. And then, of course, the many other different groups that overstay, visitors visas or other visas, who then become, are in an undocumented status. But it's helped a lot of families. It really has. It's really helped a lot of our immigrant families that could not drive and now can. It's made a huge difference.
That's good.
Thanks. Donna, it looked like you had your hand up there.
I did, thank you. Your organization has such an amazing trajectory, and I'm still appreciating the difference between services and service. So even thank you for that, because like service is more of a way of life, right? Not just hodgepodge group of things, but to go from $650 to millions of dollars. Is there a secret to your success in development and how you invite people to share in your organization? And if I'm a donor, what kind of accountability do I have for how the gift of my money?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, formally, we if you go on Charity Navigator, we have 4-star A+. Now, A+ rating, only 1% of all the charities in the US have that. And there's, over 9,500 charities that in our group, right? And so we're an A+, so that means all our money, I joked, right, in the beginning that we were the best kept secret because for many years, we invested almost every cent in direct service, right? Everything, just everything. And we still do as we've grown, right? That gives us a little more wiggle room to be able to invest in things like marketing communications. It's important. Marketing communications does in fact feed development, right? Fundraising. What is important for us to tell all the human stories, right? And we don't say JFS does this. We say we help the Gonzalez family from Guatemala. Here's their story, right? And that's our approach with donors, right? There's a huge shift in fundraising. It used to be, organizations really raise money for unrestricted, right? That means it can be used for any reason. And donors used to give to the Red Cross, used to give to JFS just because they were great organizations. Now donors give to specific areas of mission, right? They may give to immigrants. They give to, helping older adults because my mom and dad went through a terrible situation. I don't want anyone to go through that again. They give to different causes. So our work and a lot of my time is spent talking to different donors, foundations, and also keeping ahead of where the state's going. Only 20% of our funding is government, but it's an important 20%. But we've always remained a philanthropic organization. And we $6 million budget, we raise 80% of that every year. And it's really through great partnerships. Really, we have trust of donors, foundations. I think that's because the work we do is really impactful.
Related to that fundraising. Oh, I'm sorry, Donna, did you have more? Or
I just was saying thank you.
yeah. Related to that fundraising question, certainly some candidates or some administrations might have what in your views are more just or more unjust immigration policies or agendas. Is there any part of your organization that gets involved in political lobbying of any kind?
Yeah, we don't. We don't do any. We certainly we would say, hey, we support. For example, the driver's license for the undocumented. We would say this would help X number of families be able to access medical care, which will increase health outcomes in the community, right? We don't want people to be sick and have the flu, have COVID, just because they can't get to their practitioners. So I think that's how we approach. We can't say we support this actual bill, right? That we can't do. But we have other organizations. We're part of larger organizations that they do advocate. We don't pay for it, but their job is to advocate for social services, right? Advocate for immigrants and why, like MIRA. Most of you have heard of MIRA. MIRA, their job is really promoting all immigrant causes in the Commonwealth. And so we certainly, they're going to the Hill. They're working with legislators, trying to really show them this is why it's important to make sure immigrants are successful in their community, because we need them here. We've had a huge, outflux, as you've seen, of different people moving to the South because it's cheaper. Pretty much, the only people that are going to be left here in the Commonwealth will be those who have nowhere else to go. So, and that's not a great situation to be in.
Pat, I see you've got your hand up again. Just got to come off mute again. Pat, you got to come off mute. We're not hearing you till you come off mute.
I know that.
Well, while you're looking to come off mute, let me just. Oh, there you go. Perfect. Good. All right,
I lost myself in the cyberspace.
I got a whole set of questions queued up, but we'll take yours now.
I'm really interested in your focus, especially on our local area and the politics here of MetroWest in Massachusetts. Just curious, what is your take about the global migrant crisis, which is affecting Europe and all kinds of other countries, internally displaced people, all those, the very tough areas like Haiti and Ukraine and so forth.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. You mentioned you're very much involved with climate change initiatives. Many of the refugees coming, wanting to leave their countries, they're being affected by climate change, right? They can't grow food, so there's famine. There's situations, inability for a country to prosper causes civil wars, causes these groups to all of a sudden, they're already marginalized, decide to attack the government, right? And Haiti is a really good example of. Haiti used to be a fantastic agricultural country. If you look at the Dominican Republic, they're starting to have some problems there, but really the government unrest and the different marginalized groups in Haiti just accelerated, this all their citizens wanted to leave. But climate change has a huge impact globally. We're going to see more refugees wanting to come through different countries that are not as and in as bad shape, because we're all starting to see major issues throughout the world with global warming. So I think with the U.S., as I mentioned, Canada, right? They're bringing in 500,000. Japan, right? Canada and Japan have some of the largest growing aging populations. Japan, as you know, has always been a very isolated country, and that's been their norm. They are bringing in migrants and immigrants in largest numbers to be able to take care of their aging population. This is Japan. And so Canada, 500,000, we really need from refugees, at least 1 million a year to be able to, if you look at the projections of workforce needs, we need at least 1 million a year. And we only bring in 125,000 this year because of political reasons, right?
Wow.
Right now, nothing's going to change. We really need such a really tight immigration policy in place. But of course, during this election cycle, nothing's going to happen until after it.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's so important that you phrase it in terms of what we need or what would benefit our country, as opposed to, at least I think, the byline you hear from a lot of folks that oppose letting anybody in, that somehow it's all about us giving things to them at our own expense. But the way you've portrayed it, it's really the opposite, or at least it's a win-win.
I say this often. It used to be that the paradigm of immigrants really was, oh, well, immigrants, they come at low wages, large families, so they're cost centers. So actually now they're revenue centers, because we need them in such, key workforce positions. Like I just mentioned, healthcare. It's no kidding now. In Boston, many times a lot of ER rooms are closed because of lack of janitorial services. I mean, that's crazy, right? Those hospitals should be 100% ER availability, but janitorial services. So
You mentioned fairly early on that there's only a 20% acceptance rate because the bar is so high. Can you speak
yes.
a little bit more to that? What is it that's so high about the bar?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So asylum cases, the very important part of those cases is that whatever prejudice, whatever terrorism, whatever your family experience has to be state sponsored. All right. So you hear of all these gangs, right, in all these different countries. They have to prove that these gangs are in some way in cahoots with local government or state government or federal government. So with, I'll give you an example in Nicaragua. A lot of these gangs that are involved in the drug trade and kidnapping, for an asylum case to be approved, the attorneys here in Boston have to make a connection between those gangs and a local police department, for example, because that's a state entity, a police department. Some gangs are already known to the system that are or have worked with local police. They pay off the local police. But in some cases where it's a village they don't know anything about, imagine trying to figure that out, right? So the federal judge must have enough information to approve it. The burden is on the individual or family petition for asylum, and of course, how good their attorney is. But again, it's a very high bar because it's really, really hard to prove state sponsored. That's why it's so high.
So if the burden is on the immigrant or the attorney for representing them,
yep,
rather than each of them individually having to document and establish that case, is that one of the things either your organization or others do to say, here's the case for why Nicaragua falls into state sponsored, or here's the case why Haiti does, or something like that?
So yeah, actually the State Department sets those parameters.
Okay.
So if they know if there's a lot of state sponsored kidnappings, extortion, etc., they know Nicaragua, for example, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala. That's all. It's happening somewhere. So someone will be allowed to petition if they're from that country and have a passport, and they're holding a passport from that country. However, proving that that actually happened to you in your area, right? That's the tough part. That's where they live. Did they? Yeah. And sometimes they have to have affidavits from somebody who saw that, who knew that this gang leader was involved with the chief of police, and all these. The federal judge needs evidence.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's really hard. It's really hard to get information. And imagine with the Afghans, right? Right now, the Afghans, they're evacuated to the United States because they were working with the government. Everybody showed up to the airport. Everybody got on a plane, got transported. Now, most of them burnt all their paperwork, right? Because they did not want to show up to the airport because there was Taliban there checking, right? And so they burn all the records. So how do you get information? They got to find out the unit that they were working with. Is that captain, still around in the army? And, they have to, and for that captain to say, yes, this guy was my interpreter, and here's my affidavit, signs it. That kind of type of investigation has to happen. And we have thousands.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Not seeing any other hands up at the moment. I've got one other question.
I have a question.
Oh, good. Sure.
I used to work with Oxfam America, and we deal with overseas with project work in quote unquote third world countries. And do you have any connections to Oxfam America, who is another agency that provides aid and And what's going on in the Sudan? Do you have any Sudanese or Congolese
Yeah, it's a
refugees?
great question. So we don't work directly with Oxfam because they're working, internationally. What we do is our work is, we're contracted through the State Department, for those, families who have been already approved to come here. So Oxfam is doing work like trying to get them applications for refugee status so that they can get refugee status, and if they're picked to the US, then their information gets channeled to the State Department, and then that gets channeled to all our different resettlement agencies, for arrival support. That's so we don't work directly with Oxfam because they're working with, the UN High Commission of Refugees, on the ground. They're working with other aid organizations, internationally.
Yeah, we do have a U.S. organization. I believe they have a U.S. missions now. But what about the Red Cross or those type of agencies? Do you have any connections and work with the Red Cross or UNICEF, Save the Children, et
Yeah,
cetera,
we
et
definitely
cetera?
have those connections. If all goes right with our process, we never have to use them, right? We always feel like the Red Cross and other organizations, are positioned there for emergency services. And our refugees, when they come here, they never enter the shelter system. We have already planned ahead and made sure there's apartments, and our job is to integrate them quickly, right? Get jobs right away and make sure they're sustainable.
Mhm.
And the asylum
Do you
seekers
also deal with the African American community? As a Black American, there would sometimes feel like there's a competition between the immigrants that come in and the Black Americans
yeah,
that need help, the
that's
lower
a
income. Do you work? Yeah, that's a good question.
yeah, we actually work really closely here in Framingham with the Greater Framingham Community Church, Reverend Lloyd. We work really
Yes,
closely with
yes.
him. He's actually, as you know, they provide a meal program, for immigrants. So yeah, we've been, the Black community has actually been very supportive of our immigrant work. So yes, I mean, for us, it's all about community. There's no fragmentation when it comes to this work. Is the more
Do you have
people.
any programs in Natick?
Can you say that again, Deb? You broke up.
Do you have any programs in Natick?
And well, I mean, we currently do not have for example, any community sponsorship from Natick, but I'm working on it. But I think I'm getting pretty close.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Brinley, I see you've got your question, hand up.
I don't actually have any questions. I just have a gratitude. I am so grateful. I'm just grateful. This is wonderful, this work that you're doing, and I'm grateful for it. And that's all. Thank you for sharing this with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for adding that, Brinley. You'd mentioned, Lino, that a lot of times with faith organizations, you get them to kind of informally adopt, one of your families, that helps see them through the year, and that then often that relationship, maintains and extends well past a year. Do all your families or immigrants need to be associated with a sponsoring organization? Like, are there folks that go through your program that are not adopted by a faith community or another, or just kind of on their own? Or
There's been a few that do, depending on when we have like large numbers that come in all at once. So those are families we kind of basically JFS really works with. So our social workers spend extra time with them, making sure if they don't have a volunteer group. A lot of times the volunteer groups come afterwards, after their arrival. They've been here 4 or 5 months, and then we then attach a volunteer group to them. So there's different levels of where their support is. The best way is when before they arrive, we already have a core group. We've trained them, and part of that core group goes to the airport and welcomes them. It's not no better sight than that when they come off the plane, when they're looking around going, where are we? Right? They're tired. They've been flying, from a different part of the world. and there's a group that smiles and hugs them. I mean, that's a pretty powerful moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Donna, you've got your hand up.
B?
Yes.
Okay, maybe you started answering this, but is that part of the graciousness and hospitality, meeting people at the airport? Would you attribute that also to the Jewish, I'm interested in the faith-based aspect of your organization. Like what difference does it make that it's Jewish family service?
Yeah, it doesn't really. Yeah, it's just, our organization was founded by Jewish leaders back in '79. I think, and certainly, we are, if you see our mission and vision, we do align with Jewish values. But I think, as far as that, we're not connected to any particular, as you know, in the Jewish community, there's Reform, conservative, and Orthodox movements. We're not connected to any of them. For us, we're a social service agency that really wants to take care of people regardless of their background.
No, I just wondered if there were specific Jewish values that you identify with, that you try to, I mean, it's unusual to meet people at the airport like that. And I know somebody who was adopting one of your immigrant families, and her porch became like a place where people dropped things off. And so that personalism is really important. So if there were values, like, I mean, I know you serve people regardless of their own faith, but.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when I'm speaking to a church or synagogue, with Torah, the 5 books of Moses, right? The welcome in the stranger is mentioned 36 times. It is mentioned more than any other subject, right? And the reason is because there's no more vulnerable position to be in than being a stranger in a strange land. And I think that's why. If there is, when I think of at a synagogue or church, I will add that as part of certainly kind of why was it mentioned so many times? Because it's so important to welcome the stranger.
Reminds me of an expression or quote that I read. I have no idea who said it. Something along the lines of, there are lots of folks who might not profess a belief in God, but nevertheless act as if there is one. Unfortunately, there's also folks that strongly profess a belief in God, but act as if there isn't. Lino, going all the way back to your military career, are there any options for any of these folks coming in regards to military service as an avenue for them to find employment or whatever?
Yeah, it's fairly difficult. Matter of fact, we had an Afghan family, and the dad, he was a helicopter pilot in Afghanistan. He flew helicopters and supported. But and he wanted to continue to fly helicopters, but his training and license here didn't count. And he certainly was too old to even be considered for the military. And pretty much military is, in very few cases, you have to be a U.S. citizen. And they will accept a green card holder. I mean, you can enlist as a green card holder. But it really depends, on your background, where you come from, because eventually the question is, will you be able to pass some sort of security clearance if they needed you to be cleared at certain levels? So the military's recruiting commands are really picky when it comes to non-U.S. citizens.
Yeah, that's what I suspected, but
Yeah,
I'd ask.
but I do think our son served 5 years in the Army, and I do recall him saying that there were some people in his unit that were not U.S. citizens, but were hoping to become U.S. citizens.
Yeah, and
to the extent that the military uses civilians for any of the work. Yeah.
Well, I ran some recruiting commands, and if the numbers get really hard to make, the bar is lowered a bit, if you will, when it comes to citizenship status. But we had a program for many years because we really needed to recruit people, where coming into to the military with a green card accelerate your citizenship. You didn't have to wait 5 years. If you completed a successful enlistment in 3 years, you could get your citizenship.
Yeah, that, I wonder if that perhaps may have been what some of these folks were doing when he was serving. But
But you certainly come in jobs that don't require any sort of clearance. So no technical jobs, you're basically, service jobs.
Well, I'm not, oh, I was just gonna say, I'm not seeing any hands up, but now I see Donna's. Go ahead.
I was wondering if you have any comment on Biden's executive order the other day, making spouses citizens.
Was this, could you, I must have missed this. What was the executive order?
He signed an executive order saying that people who were married to immigrant spouses, that those spouses would be citizens.
Oh,
Citizens or a path to citizenship? Yeah.
Well, Abe, I just figured maybe you knew more, so.
I see this is, I missed that, but so this is spouses of members of the military?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with the military. I think it's just I don't know that much about it myself. I think it's if I am an American citizen and Doug were an immigrant, it gives him, I think, I don't know if it's better path to citizenship, or I don't know much about it, but I don't think it has anything
After
to do
10
with
years. After 10 years.
After
Oh,
10 years.
thank you.
Okay, well, something to look into.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, citizenship, actually strengthens, the family unit, be able to vote, right? If you're already in a community, and I mean, I think being able to vote is important. It adds a different level. I've seen with other families when they become citizens that they kind of they change. All of a sudden, they feel responsible versus, there a lot of families come here and they feel like they're being sheltered, and thank God they came out of a war zone. Their kids are safe. But then when they become citizens, we say, now you have, we also, of course, brief them, our volunteers, and now you have a real responsibility because you can vote and how you're going to vote. And so there is it's a completely different level.
So thank you. So it's a good way of strengthening the family,
Yeah.
I guess is what everyone's saying.
Yeah, in the community, right? I think,
Yeah, Laura, you've got your hand up.
I would just like to tell everybody, I've been working with JFS on their resettlement, and it's an amazing organization. The people are amazing, and I just applaud the efforts that this organization has been doing for years.
Oh, that's great to hear, Laura. Wow.
And Laura, I know you came in a little late. I had mentioned it was this is our 45th anniversary of doing this work. So it's
and have done a fabulous job. Fabulous.
Wow. Thank you. Well, Lino, thank you so much for spending the time with us this morning. Of course, we'll have this session recorded. Be very interested to hear what your AI summary thinks about it. If it's anything that you think has some value and you have the ability to share it with me, I'd love to see that. But thanks again for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I did put in the chat our link.
Yes.
Something that you as community members can do. We need assistance, not only volunteers, financial assistance. There's plenty, I know, family foundations out there that don't know about us. You bump into it, you have coffee, and you ask them, what are you doing? Oh, I have to run my family foundation. I'm going nuts. I don't know where to give the money. You can say, well, I have an idea for you. So
that's awesome.
But thank you. Really appreciate your time. And again, this is important work, and if you're not on our newsletter, please sign up, because you're going to see all these different innovative approaches we're going to take with all our new arriving families. We need them here, and we want to make sure they're successful.
Terrific.
Awesome.
Thank you. So for the group, next week we are going to have Deb Sayer talking to us about the Natick Center Cultural District. They're undergoing a change in leadership. Good old Paul Joseph, who's donating the Metro or making the Metro workspace available to us for these meetings, is, I believe, interim head of the organ or director or whatever. But we'll learn more about that. We've got speakers lined up for the remainder of January, and then we'll be
July.
and then we'll be taking one of those J months. We'll be taking a break in August, which clearly we need if I can't even get the month right. But so Martin, if you haven't already, I certainly can turn the recording off at this point.